Welcome to the Confidence in You podcast, designed to help you build confidence and create positive, lasting change in your life. And here's your host, Helen Luxford.
Hi, and welcome back to the podcast, and thanks for being here again. And I do hope that you gain inspiration to build the life you deserve by making bold, intentional choices, and that the hints and tips you get on the podcast are helpful. Today we're going to dive into a topic that affects all of us. It is fear. Fear is something we all experience, but here's the thing, it doesn't have to control us. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how courage is the choice to face fear head on, and how embracing that courage can lead to transformation in your life. And you do that by one step at a time. Mark Twain once said, "Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not absence of fear." Fear is a normal, natural part of life. And courage is when you dive deep inside and make the decision to act, to do something, even though you're feeling the fear and despite of feeling that fear. So today we're going to talk about how can we choose courage in our daily lives, especially when fear can feel overwhelming. So let's start by understanding fear. Fear is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism, and it's designed to keep us safe from danger. In ancient times, it was the reason our ancestors stayed alive, because it alerted them to predators like saber-toothed tigers or other life-threatening dangers. But in today's world, we rarely face such physical threats. Instead, fear shows up in different ways. Fear shows up when we're stepping into uncharted territory, we're stepping outside of our comfort zone, or we're facing uncertainty, or something unexpected has come up, or things didn't go to plan. And you would have felt it, we all have, when fear rises, our heart races, there might be a stirring in our stomach, maybe your palms get sweaty, or you feel that rush of hot wave coming over you, or your neck starts to go red. And that's your body's way of responding to fear and letting you know, telling you that you're stepping into an unknown, that this is uncomfortable, this is something that's uncertain for you. And while that physical response was once essential for survival, today it can show up when we don't really want it to. Like when you're thinking about applying for a new job, or talking to your boss, or starting a business, or wanting to ask someone out on a date, or wanting to talk to someone about something or have a difficult conversation. Our body reacts as if we're facing real physical danger, even though the risk is about maybe not performing well in that job interview, or maybe someone saying no if you're asking them out, or if you start that new business you've always dreamed about and you know you'd be good at it, but it might not work out, or that others might mock you, or they might have tall poppy syndrome and you fear that, or they might be unhappy about you doing it because it doesn't fit their image of what they expect for you, or that if you are successful, others might say that you're selfish. So fear can show up in many, many different ways in modern society. Or it might be that just saying hello to someone or talking to them really makes you feel uncomfortable because you're not sure how they'll respond, or you don't want to have that difficult conversation because you don't like conflict. Most of us don't like conflict. So fear pops up, and it pops up to stop you doing something outside your comfort zone. But most of these situations aren't like the saber-toothed tiger coming at you, although that physical and emotional response and those feelings can be the same. You see, fear is sneaky. It might not show up in how you're feeling, but it can also show up with that little voice inside you that whispers, what if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if someone sees you doing it? And sometimes these fears stem from old wounds. Maybe in the past, someone once said to you, you weren't good enough, or you're not capable, or a teacher might have said you'll never amount to anything, or someone might have called you stupid. And it stung. Those things do sting, and they stay with us. And our body remembers them. Or maybe you tried before and things didn't go as planned. And that little voice inside you remembers that too. And it goes back and it finds those memories and it plays them on repeat. And it does it because it's trying to protect you from feeling that pain again. But what it does is it keeps you stuck. And here's the thing. Most of the time, fear is based on our imagined outcomes, on what we're perceiving may happen, on scenarios that may never happen. And it's your mind's perception of what might be. And it could be a distorted memory of something that once was. And while those feelings can and do feel all-consuming in the moment, it's important to realize that fear is not always rooted in reality. And just like I said, it could be an imagined outcome or a scenario that we've jumped to a final conclusion and we've catastrophized. But if this happens, and then that'll happen, and that'll happen, and then that'll happen. But that first step never happens, but we have imagined that it will. And that physical reaction, that knot in your stomach, that tightening in your chest, they're real. And it's your body's alarm system. But once you're aware, you don't have to let those things stop you. You can learn to recognize those feelings, and you can learn to practice ways to help calm your nervous system so that then you can find your courage and step into that uncertainty, step into it anyway, even though you might be feeling fear. And you can find and learn ways to quieten that inner voice, to acknowledge that it's there, absolutely, to acknowledge the fear also, but without letting it dictate your actions. And overcoming fear starts by recognizing that the courage you need is already within you. It's there. It might be just buried deep down. And you can learn to face those sensations. You can learn to breathe through them. And you can still take that next step forward. And courage doesn't mean you won't feel fear, because you will. We all do. It means you'll feel it and you'll keep moving. And the more you practice this, the quieter the fear becomes and allows you to explore new ways of doing, being, and having. And it all starts with taking that first brave step, even when your heart is pounding and your stomach feels uneasy. And you don't have to do it by yourself. You can share with others. You can practice doing it with others. You can do things together. You can have and be the things that you want, and you can create ways to help yourself step into that uncertainty. And that's the gem. That's when real growth happens, when you learn new techniques and tips and you ask for help to learn them. And when you're able to feel that fear, recognize it for an old memory or a thought process that may or may not ever happen, and feeling the fear, you take action anyway. Think of every courageous person that you've admired. Were they fearless? No, I don't think so. They felt fear, but they chose to act anyway. And they may have chose to act in an instant, in a real quick flash, and that helps the fear just dissipate because you've made a decision. You've made a decision to move forward. And courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a woman who really, really wanted to be a corporate trainer, but she was scared of standing up in front of others in that way. And every time an opportunity came up, she'd say, oh, I'm too busy, or not today, or I really don't have time to learn the content. She would make excuses. And the more she avoided it, the more scared she became of being a trainer, of standing up and facilitating a training session. And that fear controlled her, and it stopped her from taking opportunities when they were offered to her. And I saw it happen with her quite a few times. So finally I said, come on, let's have a coffee, and we had a chat. And I asked her if she wanted to do the training. And she said yes, she was very excited. And then I asked her, well, what's stopping you? And she said, I just don't think that I have the knowledge and the skills and the experience to be able to do that training. She opened up and she told me about this fear that she might be a fraud and that people wouldn't respect her and that they wouldn't listen to her. And we had a chat about that. And after our chat, she decided to take the next opportunity that arose. And she started small, and you'll hear me say it all the time, start small. And she had a mentor that she first shadowed and observed them, and then she co-facilitated with them. And then eventually she was so confident that she just took over one session and ran it all by herself. She took it one step at a time. The first time she felt that fear, but she did it anyway. She felt the fear and she built her courage muscle, one little step at a time. And each time she felt the fear, but it was a little bit less. But she felt the fear, she drew a breath, and she acted anyway. And now she's a great trainer and she does it very, very confidently. And that's the power you have inside of you, the ability to finally connect with your courage muscle. And the more you use it and practice it, the stronger it gets. And the more you build your courage muscle, the easier it becomes. And it all starts with just taking a little step when you feel that fear, and just taking one little step anyway. So how to build courage in your life? So how do you start choosing courage, especially when fear feels so powerful? Let's talk about a few strategies to help you build your courage muscle. Number 1, acknowledge the fear. It's there. Don't try to suppress it or deny it. Just acknowledge it. And say, heck, it's there. You can even give it a name if you want. And you could say to yourself, I feel afraid, and that's okay. Acknowledge and own how you're feeling about it. That's the first step. It's just understanding that you've got that fear there. The goal is not to eliminate fear, but to understand it and to connect in and see it for what it really is. And number 2, take a small step. Courage doesn't mean making huge leaps every time. Start small. Whatever you want to do, acknowledge that fear. Feel it, give it a name, acknowledge it, understand why it's coming up and what it's stopping you doing. And then work out what is one small step that you could take next time to just step into it, just a little bit. Face into it, but take a small step each time and build your confidence slowly, and your courage will come. If you're afraid of any change, take small, manageable steps towards your goal. Don't think about the big goal at the end. Think about what is the next step that I can take. Because each small step that you take, you'll have a feeling of victory. A little bit more, a little bit stronger. That courage muscle will be built. And you'll get victory over fear. And that'll help you build momentum. And when you have momentum, you can move more easily. Think of trying to push a car or a boulder. The first push is the hardest to get it going. But then once it's moving, once it's rolling, it's easier to keep going and to steer and to maneuver. So that first step of courage, make it a small one, and then the next one can be a small one. And then as you build momentum, it will get easier. And number 3 is reframe failure. One of the biggest things that stops us is, oh, it didn't work. So you stop. But you don't fail unless you stop doing and stop trying. One of the biggest drivers of fear is the fear of failure. But what if you reframe that failure, that perceived failure, as a learning opportunity? As a master NLP coach, we believe there is no fail, only feedback. And if you reframe what might be considered a failure as feedback, then you will look at things differently, because you can't fail if you haven't stopped. If you haven't stopped, you're still experiencing, you're still learning, you're still refining. You only fail when you stop doing. So if you take that perceived failure as a stepping stone, as a little hurdle along the way, a little detour, of course, maybe, and you observe what happened and you learn from it, you take a learning from it, then that learning will help you avoid a similar situation in the future. And instead of saying to yourself, but what if I fail? Because that's the fear coming up. That's the fear talking. How about you say, but what if I succeed? And look for opportunities to help you succeed. Ask others who've been there before you, what did they do? Ask them what challenges they faced, what did they learn, and learn from their learnings. And ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience to help me in the future? That small shift in perspective can reduce the power that fear holds over you, because your focus is on the learning, taking that learning and going again and revisiting it and doing things differently. And number 4, visualize, see your success in the future. Only imagine what it feels like. And instead of focusing on the worst case scenario, imagine the best case outcome. Just use your imagination. You don't have to visualize it if you're not a person that sees things, but imagine. Use your imagination, dream about it. Just feel what it would be like to succeed. Feel into that moment. What would it look like if you succeeded? How would things be different for you in your life? Imagine the positive impact that this could be for you. This process of imagining can help you move past fear by focusing on the what if it does work scenario instead of what if it doesn't work. And finally, I want to talk about the ripple effect of courage. Because the choice to find and connect with your courage does have a ripple effect. Because every time you face fear, you expand your comfort zone and that builds momentum. And taking a small courageous step today leads to finding your confidence and finding more courage tomorrow, because your courage muscle is getting stronger. It's building your courage muscle. And as you become braver in one area of your life, it spills over into other areas. And remember this, your courage can inspire others. Think about the people that you've seen who've been before you, and you look at them and you're like, oh, maybe I could do that too. Other people will look at you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, those around you. You can inspire others. When you take bold action despite your fear, you show the people around you that things are possible. And you can become a role model for courage in your family, your workplace, and your community. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and I hope today's conversation encouraged you to start making the choice to go within, to find and connect with your courage, and to face into those challenging moments, because you know deep down inside, you can do it. You can find your courage muscle. Fear will always be there in some way, shape or form, but it doesn't have to stop you. It doesn't have to dictate your life. Every time you choose to use your courage muscle, you take one step closer to building the life that you truly want and deserve. And until next time, thanks for being here. And remember that the choice to face your fears is one of the most empowering decisions you can make. You've got this. And if you need some help, want to talk about it, reach out, book a 30-minute free chat. And remember, it's okay to let your light shine.